Welcome, Japanese woodblock print collectors and enthusiasts. Today we're going to take a deeper dive into some woodblock prints of the most famous mountain in Japan, Mount Fuji. But first I'll start with 6 quick facts about Mount Fuji. It's the tallest mountain in Japan at 12,300 feet. It's an active volcano, but the last eruption was in 1707. It has a near-perfect symmetrical cone. It's been a sacred site for practitioners of the Shinto religion. Women were not allowed to climb Mount Fuji until 1872. And every year up to 300,000 people climb to the summit. Side note, back in 1981, my brother and I went to Japan to visit our mad Uncle Michael. That's a story for another day. But we did have the opportunity to climb Mount Fuji. Here's a photo of my brother. He's holding a walking staff in his hands. You can buy these near the base, and as you go up the mountain, they have rest stations and they brand your staff with the name of each station as you pass. It's a really cool souvenir. And here's me and my brother at sunrise on the summit. Okay, enough history. Let's look at some prints. The 2 most prominent artists of Mount Fuji are Hokusai and Hiroshige, and we're going to get into their series of Mount Fuji prints. But first I wanted to show you some prints by earlier artists, starting with this vertical duotone print by Torii Kiyomasu II, done in 1752, called Fuji Viewing Village. We see actor Nakamura Denkuro as Asahina. Next, a print by Torii Kiyomitsu called Yorimoto's Hunt at the foot of Mount Fuji from 1755. This hunt was arranged by Shogun Yorimoto, and 700,000 people participated in this event in the year 1193. This is a horizontal print split down the middle with 2 parts of the same scene. It's also somewhat comical. There's a monkey riding a small deer and some samurai trying to catch a rabbit under his hat. We see a stylized Mount Fuji in the background, looking like a backdrop on a stage. Next, this beautiful print by Torii Kiyonaga, called Under Shin Ohashi Bridge, done in 1785. Fuji can be seen small off in the distance, but the perspective is really well illustrated, and there's also a lot happening on the boat in the foreground. We can see the wind blowing the sleeves of the woman. They are fishing and smoking and enjoying the view from the river. The artist Kitagawa Utamaro brings us this triptych print, Narihira's Journey to the East, done in 1797. There are so many characters here and so much action in the foreground, yet there stands Mount Fuji in the background as this unifying shape, holding all the activities together. Okay, now let's look at some prints by Hokusai, starting with this one, called Fast Cargo Boat Battling the Waves from 1805. It doesn't have Fuji in it, but it may look a bit familiar because he reused this composition in his famous series 36 Views of Mount Fuji, and this iconic print called Under the Wave off Kanagawa. The next prints we see will be from this groundbreaking series he designed in 1830 at the ripe old age of 70. Can you believe it? 70 years old. He devised a multitude of creative ways to incorporate Mount Fuji, the people, lifestyles, and sites of specific places in Japan. Here is a more sedate picture of the ocean, at sea off Kazusa. But once again, you can see how he's minimized Fuji in this very zoomed out view. You can even see the curvature of the horizon line. Let's jump from that to in-your-face Fuji, with Sudden Shower Beneath the Summit, and its sister print called Red Fuji, which is the mountain seen from a different vantage point. In these 2 prints, the mountain is the main focus, majestically towering over the landscape, the clouds, and even the storm and lightning. Next, we have Fuji from Kanaya on the Tokaido. Travelers are crossing the Oi River. I counted over 120 people on this print. Fuji is the anchor in the distance, standing in contrast to the undulating waves. It really has a lot of motion. Even the waves have these curved lines from the fields, adding to the dynamics. Next, we have a print that emphasizes simple geometric shapes called Fuji View Plain in Owari Province, where we see a man making a huge circular tub that perfectly frames Mount Fuji in the distance. A couple of fun facts here. About 20 years earlier, Hokusai published a painting manual that recommended starting with basic geometric shapes as a base for artistic compositions. This print is a good example of that, with a circular barrel in the center, the circular hoops at the side, the grid lines of the fields, and the triangle of Mount Fuji. Fun fact number 2 is that Hokusai wasn't very good at geography, and this location is actually 150 miles away from Mount Fuji, so you wouldn't have been able to see it from here. I'm not going to go through all the prints in this series, although many are masterpieces. I do want to quickly show you some pages from his book 100 Views of Mount Fuji from 1834. It's just scene after beautiful scene of Fuji and the people of Japan. You can see this book online at the Museum of Fine Arts Boston website. Now let's jump to 1852, a few years after Hokusai's death, where the famous landscape artist Ando Hiroshige debuted his series, also called 36 Views of Mount Fuji. This series of smaller chuban-size prints is simple and poetic. This first print is called Wind-Tossed Waves at 7 Mile Beach in Sagami Province. The blue waves in the foreground echoing the shape of the white Fuji in the center of the background. Next we have Fuji Marsh in Suruga Province, with Fuji larger than life, even breaking through the top border of the print. In the foreground we have a couple of fishermen. Hiroshige was always an expert at integrating the common people into his landscapes. Next we have Edobashi Bridge and Nihonbashi Bridge in Edo. We see the busy bridge and the city rooftops in the lower half, and then clouds with Fuji rising in the background of the top half. Now let's jump to 1858, when Hiroshige published another series of prints also called 36 Views of Mount Fuji. This series was larger, oban size, and vertical, and I think a lot more interesting than his previous 1852 version. But first, let's take a look at the title page. These are so often overlooked, but many, like this one, are beautifully designed. You have the title at the top and Fuji in the fan shape, then 3 blocks listing all of the prints, and then the beautiful background behind it with the detail of the flowers and the running stream. It's a work of art in itself. This first print I'll show you is called the Sea off Sata in Suruga Province. Notice the wave on the right mirroring the shape of the trees on the left. This larger size print format really gives Hiroshige the space to demonstrate his artistry. And look at all the color gradations we've got here. The sky, Fuji, the mountains, and the sea. In this series, Fuji rarely dominates the scenes. Next, a winter scene called Riverbank at Tsukiya in Edo. We see the snow-covered landscape. The tall brick wall on the right is part of Edo Castle. There's a little splash of color in the travelers and porters crossing the Tsukiya Bridge, and a view of Mount Fuji in the background, where Fuji is rendered as a simple line, which he didn't even finish. So although the mountain is massive, it feels light, cool, and airy. Here we have this lush, colorful print called Kogane in Musashi Province. This is one of the most unusual views of Mount Fuji in the series. You can see the summit of Fuji through the hole in the tree trunk. In this print, the beauty of nature really takes center stage, and we barely notice Fuji. Can you see those people enjoying the cherry blossoms? You can see why Hiroshige is the master of the Japanese landscape. This next print of the Suruga district in Tokyo shows us manzai dancers in the foreground, in front of the famous Mitsukoshi store on the right side. Hiroshige uses one-point perspective to draw our eyes to a snow-covered Mount Fuji in the background. You can find the complete Hiroshige Fuji series at hiroshigeorg.uk. I'll leave you with this well-known Japanese proverb. A wise man climbs Mount Fuji once. Only a fool climbs it twice. Mount Fuji is more than a mountain. It's integral to the Japanese culture and symbolizes Japan's natural beauty. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and happy collecting!